No, I gotta be honest, that's some disrespectful shit right there. Best episode of Bleach, probably, but disrespectful. The whole episode, I'm mostly assuming that Nemu ain't gonna make it. Because that's kind of, I know when Bleach was written, it was pretty common trend to, you know, build up into a sacrifice. Especially for a situation that's essentially scientist subject, but is actually kind of an interesting take of father-daughter. But then, about 30 seconds before the explosion, I thought to myself, actually, maybe it's a little more 50-50 she lives, because it's surpassing limits, showing you that your test subject doesn't just take orders, she's her own person. The death is like, okay, it's sad. Like, a death would be sad, but, it'd be what it is. It's how abruptly, how intensely, and how goddamn disrespectful they explode her like a bag of confetti. The fact that I was also more upset than even Mayuri, I mean, it kind of makes sense. Mayuri's always been a twisted kind of son of a bitch. Knowing who he is as a person, it's entirely possible if he comes out of that tube alive. You know how sometimes in like sci-fi films, like there's like a brain floating in water and it's like a robot moving around talking to you? That's gonna be her, isn't it? He's gonna slap that brain into a body. Best episode. Full live reactions over on Patreon if you want to see my mind break in real time to this greatness over there exclusively. So, I want to say we won there, but I've thought that multiple times. Until we finish the arc, or until the Quincy King's dead, I refuse to actually accept anything's over. It could be done in the manga, and the anime could say, actually, let's let a sliver of an intestine continue it. This feels like a W, but goddamn, does it really? To come back to a fight that Mayuri was under the impression he won. Hell, we thought so too. And then baby exploded. Things come though, and they're just cutting limbs off like it's nothing. And I'm thinking to myself, everyone's getting nerfed over here. We're losing limbs left and right. And they inject themselves with some super serum, and that shit regrows. And I think, okay, maybe it's not as helpless and hopeless as we initially thought. And you could for me, I've seen enough anime, I've read enough stories, I've consumed enough media. I knew we were building into a death, and most likely Mayuri was gonna make it because they would have this daughter-like dynamic save his life. Like, that is kind of the trope. But tropes don't have to be bad. Even if, like, you look at when the manga was initially written too, like, a lot of these types of things, a lot of newer stuff would take influence from a story like Bleach, right? But the idea that, it kind of starts off in this way of like, unless I give an order, F off. Like, that's pretty much the vibe. And she's like, okay, bet, you're the master. And, he refers to her as number 7. And of course, over the episode, we get the flashback and we see the different test tubes and how over the course of them, I think it was like number 4 or 5 ended up living till they were 2, but then the lifespan didn't finish. And for whatever reason, she was the one that succeeded. So she was the test tube baby that was pretty much a prized possession. And obviously when you end up in that situation, especially with a character as twisted as Mayuri, they're not going to have a normal so-called family. So the idea of what is essentially his daughter here, because that's really what it is. It's it's a warped version of a father-daughter story sacrifice. And the idea of her because initially when she like charged to save him, that's where I was expecting her to like lose half her body or something. Like, I thought that would be, the death. And silly me thinking, thinking back to other shows, there'd be like this emotional moment. Maybe he wouldn't call her number 7. You'd actually refer to her just as her name, right? No, but this is a twisted scientist. He stays true to his character. And when he sees her explode like that, the only thing he can think is, eat her all up, but give me that brain back. But to be fair, the brain, as long as he has it, it's entirely possible. Even if he can't regrow her body from that because she do be dead, her personality potentially could live on. And even if not, he's the type of guy who would slap that shit into a test tube and frame it like cour. Because why not? But the explosion, it really is unexpected because if you're like me, you're expecting her not to make it for most of the episode. But that initial charge where she does, I forget what she said, like 6% of her soul to obliterate the hand. I'm thinking to myself, okay, But you're probably expecting limbs to be lost because they've already established that in the episode. They've already established that in this arc to begin with. But it's the way that they sew poof. And they didn't hide shit. There is guts, there is blood, there is intestines just splattered everywhere. Which has me honestly dumbfounded as to why, because initially when they both lose their arm, there's like no blood coming out. I'm thinking to myself, well, you know, maybe they want to get around some gore on TV because, you know, obviously the more blood you show, the more these TV stations gonna get a little more panties in a twist. Also, maybe they just didn't want to animate the blood, you know, save a little time. And then like 15 minutes later, they cover your screen with, I felt like I had to wipe her guts off me. And I'm thinking to myself, you can't show a little blood splatter after they get their arms cut off? Come on now. But seriously, nitpicking aside, like, you feel like a broken record trying to, like, I still think my favorite fight we've seen so far in Thousand Year Blood War is the Renji fight from a couple weeks back, you know what I mean? That fight with Ishta a couple weeks back was just so good. But in terms of a pure episode, I like that we didn't cut around perspectives, we kept it focused on this, because I think, honestly, had you done what, like, even Bleach does this from time to time, but if you do what a lot of these battle shows do and they cut perspectives, which they have to cut perspectives because there's so much going on, but could you imagine this being broken up into multiple, like, even if the other side stories going on aren't comedic like sometimes these shows go, it just would have broke up the flow, and allowing it to actually have the impact, and to see him, you know, he's like, hey, if you want to put Buddy in the tube next to me, go ahead. Like, he just hates him so much, but at the same time can't let him die. It's such a satisfying victory, but you're still in the back of your mind, you're like, what if it's not a victory? And it's like, well, even if we did succeed here, I mean, we still have the biggest boss to deal with. And all people keep telling me is that Core 4 should be crazier than what we're seeing in Core 3, which really has me doing a double take. I could understand saying it's going to be as good as Core 3, because how are you telling me that Core 4 is going to be, like, I'm excited, but Core 4 could be slightly under the quality we're getting here and I'd still be satisfied, because I feel like we've reached the peak. I'm excited and intrigued, but Jesus, telling me Core 4 is going to be even crazier? Wild. I'm excited. But if this is just not even the most insane shit to come, what the f is going to happen next core? I don't know, but so far, 1,000 Year Blood War with each core. You do the math. Let me know your thoughts down below on this week's episode. How did you feel about it, and where do you think it's going to go next? Let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new around here. Of course, ring that bell. And like I mentioned, we got those full live reactions over on Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shout out. So today we got Guy Palace, Sharable Cochris, Brian Missed, Big Red, Waka866, Andy, Anime Fan 2019, and we also have Banjo Silk. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care. Y'all have a good one.